You know how people say weddings bring families together? Yeah, mine does the opposite. My name is Tanya Scrivener. I'm 27 years old, and a week before what was supposed to be the happiest day of my life, a single phone call from my mother made me question everything my family, my place in it, and whether they ever saw me as anything more than a convenient placeholder. A dependable background character in a show that only ever starred one person. My younger sister Talia, the golden child. If you grew up with a sibling who could do no wrong, you know the script. Talia could set a kitchen towel on fire because she forgot the stove was on, and Mom would giggle and say, "She's such a free spirit. She could get caught cheating in high school. She just needs encouragement. Fail out of college her first year. She's finding herself. Crash Dad's car while half drunk. At least she's safe, that's all that matters." Meanwhile, I was the reliable one, the responsible one, the daughter who did everything right. Straight A's, scholarships, college graduate, first stable job. I remembered birthdays, paid rent on time, checked in on my parents, even when they barely returned the energy. I didn't rock the boat. I learned early on that silence kept the peace. And maybe that was my mistake. Still, I thought my wedding, my one big day, might finally be different. My boyfriend Evan Carter and I met 3 years ago at a volunteer event. He was handing out boxed meals with that quiet, earnest smile of his sleeves rolled up, hair falling over his forehead, in a way that looked accidentally cinematic. He remembered my favorite coffee after our first date. He asked about my day with genuine interest. He brought my mom flowers even when she looked at him like she was appraising a discount item on a marked-down shelf. He loved me in a way that felt steady, healing. We planned a small vineyard wedding, intimate, soft, beautiful. Sage green and cream. Simple, elegant. Us. We'd spent almost a year curating everything from the menu to the musician for the aisle walk. Evan even found an old-fashioned floral arch that reminded me of my grandmother's garden. For once in my life, I felt like something was finally mine. Then Monday happened. I was on my lunch break at work, balancing my sandwich on one knee while clearing notifications on my phone. That's when my mother's caller ID lit up the screen. She rarely called during the day unless something was wrong or dramatically blown out of proportion. I answered anyway. "Hi, Mom, everything okay?" She paused, but not the worried kind of pause, the rehearsed kind. "Tanya, sweetheart." She began with that overly sweet voice, the one she used when she was about to drop a bomb she hoped to decorate with sugar. "I need to tell you something important." There was clinking in the background, tea stirring. My stomach tightened. "It's your sister, Talia. Well, she's pregnant." I blinked. Okay, big news, sure. Complicated, definitely. But I didn't understand why she was calling me during my lunch break like this was some emergency I needed to manage. "Oh," I said cautiously. Wow. I didn't even know she and Miguel were on speaking terms again. Are they happy about it? "They're processing," she said, in a vague diplomatic tone. "But your father and I have been talking, and we think it's important Talia steps up, takes responsibility, makes the right choices." I frowned. "Okay, but what does that have to do with—" She cut me off. "Well, honey, we think it makes the most sense if she and Miguel get married soon." Another pause. Longer. Sharper. Like she was bracing for my confusion. "And we all agreed it would be best if they used your wedding venue." I froze. I honestly thought she meant another weekend, another event. So I laughed because surely she didn't mean, "You mean, like they'll have their wedding at the same vineyard? Different date, right?" "No," she replied, voice tightening like I was being difficult on purpose. "We mean instead of yours." My chest went hollow. "Same place, same decorations, same caterer," she continued. "We already spoke to Miguel's parents, and they love the idea." I stopped breathing for a moment. "You're not serious." "Tanya, sweetie, you're such a good sister. You've always been so mature, and Talia is really scared right now. We need to support her. Your date is already set. Everything is paid for. It just makes so much sense." Since my voice came out a whisper. "You want me to cancel my wedding?" She huffed like I was being dramatic. "It's not canceling. It's postponing. Just a few months. I'm sure your guests will understand. Family comes first, right?" I swallowed hard. "What about the deposits? The flights Evan's family already booked. The dress, the officiant, my bridal party, Evan's ring bearer." "Oh, your ring bearer, little Oliver, right? Kayla just adores him. She'd love for him to walk down Talia's aisle." My blood went cold. "Mom, Are you really asking me to give up my entire wedding so Talia can get married before she shows? Tanya, this is an opportunity to show compassion. You don't have children, so you don't understand how important this is. Talia needs this. You'll be fine. You always are. Something inside me snapped, not loudly, not dramatically, just a small, silent fracture in a place that had already been cracked 1,000 times. I didn't argue, I didn't yell, I didn't beg. I simply said, okay. Her voice brightened instantly. Oh, honey, I knew you'd... I hung up. Just hung up. A clean click, a severed line. Then I scrolled to the Vineyard contact in my phone. Hi, I said when the coordinator picked up. My hands were shaking. Is there any chance we can move our wedding up 2 weeks? She checked. Yes, absolutely. The earlier date is free. Perfect, I said. Let's do that. It wasn't revenge. Not then. It was clarity. If my family wanted to pretend my wedding didn't exist, I'd give them nothing to steal. And they would never see it coming. When I hung up on my mother, I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel brave. Honestly, I didn't feel anything at all. It was the kind of numbness that comes after you've held back for too long, after years of swallowing comments, letting slights slide, pretending favoritism didn't scrape at you like sandpaper. A numbness built from habit, not strength. But as I sat there in that small break room, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead like angry bees, something new began to simmer beneath the surface. Quiet, controlled, terrifyingly steady. I walked outside, leaned against the cool brick wall, and called Evan. He picked up on the second ring, voice warm as always. Hey, babe. Everything okay? I exhaled shakily. Evan. They want us to cancel the wedding. He fell silent, and I could almost picture him straightening in his chair at work, brow furrowing, the way it always does when he's trying not to interrupt me. So I told him everything, word for word, every sentence my mother had said, every excuse, every dismissal, every assumption that I would quietly step aside while my sister stepped into the spotlight again. When I finished, there was a long pause. Then, move it up, he said. Simple, solid, no hesitation. If we're going to get married, we're doing it on our terms. A lump formed in my throat. You're not mad, or upset, or disappointed. Tanya, his voice softened. I love you. Not the version your parents expect you to be. You. And I'm not letting them steal something that belongs to us. That was the thing about Evan. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't threaten. He didn't posture. He just showed up every time. By the time we hung up, the numbness had cracked. Relief seeped in. A hint of empowerment, too. But my family, they weren't done. Not even close. The first earthquake came from my sister. 2 hours later, during a meeting, my phone buzzed again and again. When I saw the screen, it was a flurry of messages from Talia. Tanya, why won't you answer? Mom said you're being weird about the wedding thing. It's not a big deal. You can have yours later. Ours will be cute. Maybe you can help plan? Also, can we use your bridesmaids? You already picked good ones, LO. I felt my stomach twist into a knot. She wasn't even pretending. Not hiding entitlement behind guilt or charm. She genuinely believed I was going to hand her my entire wedding like a spare jacket. Then came the message that made my vision blur. And tell Evan to chill. It's for family. He should understand by now how things work. How things work. Right. Talia pressure wrecks her life, and the world rearranges itself so she doesn't feel consequences. I turned my phone face down and pushed through the rest of the day on autopilot. The second earthquake came that evening. After work, I stepped into my apartment and instantly knew something was off. Voices. Low, sharp, familiar. I froze. My parents were sitting on my couch. Uninvited. Comfortable. Like they owned the place. My mother stood first, smoothing her skirt. There you are. We need to talk. I'm working, I said, not moving from the doorway. This will only take a moment, she replied. We brought something to make this easier. She reached into her tote and dropped a thick folder onto my coffee table. That's everything for Talia's wedding. Seating charts, color palette, notes for your florist. Kayla helped put it together. I stared at the folder like it was a ticking bomb. My voice came out small but steady. You're actually doing this. My mother sighed dramatically, as if I were an unreasonable child. Tanya, don't make this difficult. Talia is frightened. She needs support, not selfishness. Selfishness, I whispered. My father finally spoke, arms crossed. You're acting immature. This is a chance to show who you really are. Show who I really am, like being the responsible one meant abandoning myself altogether. I felt something tighten in my chest, a pressure that had been building for years. All the times they forgot to ask about my job, all the birthdays overshadowed by Talia's drama, all the excuses, all the swallowed disappointments, and now this. I took a slow breath. You need to leave. My mother blinked. What? You need to leave, I repeated louder this time. My hand was already on the door. Tanya, my father said sharply, stop being ridiculous. No, I said, not this time. They stared at me like they didn't recognize the woman standing in front of them, because maybe they didn't. Maybe they only ever saw the version of me that never spoke up. My mother stepped closer. You're making a mistake, sweetheart. Talia needs this. You don't. There it was. The truth they'd been circling for years. Talia's needs mattered. Mine did not. I opened the door wider. Get out. There was a long, tense silence. And then, unbelievably, my mother scoffed. Fine. If you want to be dramatic, we'll go. But you're going to regret this. They walked out without another word. No apology. No hesitation. Just disappointment directed at me, the daughter whose wedding they tried to steal. I closed the door quietly, locked it, pressed my forehead against the cool wood, and let out a shaky breath. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stood there, letting the stillness settle around me like a new skin. Then I texted Evan. They came to our apartment. He called immediately. You okay? I swallowed. Yeah, for the first time. I think I actually am. There was a pause, soft, warm. Tanya, he said gently, you don't have to break yourself to keep a broken family together. His words were the final push. I straightened, exhaled, and whispered, I'm done. Really done this time. Not with pain, not with disappointment, with silence. With the version of myself who believed if I tried hard enough, they'd finally see me. Not anymore, because they had made their choice. And now I was making mine. The morning of our new wedding date arrived without fanfare. No family texts, no chaos, no last-minute emergencies. Just quiet sunlight pouring through my blinds and the soft hum of the vineyard staff preparing outside the guest suite. It felt unreal. For the first time in months, my life felt like it belonged solely to me. Evan knocked lightly on the suite door before walking in, careful not to look too closely at me as I stood in my robe. Just checking if you need anything, he said, with that gentle grin that always made me feel more grounded than any deep breath could. I smiled back. No, I'm good. Nervous, but good. He stepped closer, eyes soft. Tanya, I know this isn't how you imagine things. None of this is fair, but I want you to know something. I tilted my head. What? I'm not here because of the venue or the date or the decorations your mom wanted to steal? His grin widened softly. I'm here because you're choosing us, finally choosing you. Something in my chest tightened, not painfully, but in that way a knot unravels after being pulled too tight for too long. He left before tradition was broken, and for a moment I simply stood there staring at the door he'd walked through, feeling something I hadn't felt since childhood. Peace. The ceremony. The vineyard was breathtaking. Rows of white wooden chairs lined the lawn, wrapped with sage ribbon that fluttered like whispered secrets in the wind. Our arch was draped in soft cream flowers. Evan picked it out because it reminded him of the way I tucked my hair behind my ear when I was deep in thought. Guests began arriving, only the ones who genuinely cared about us friends. A handful of extended relatives, and my cousin Brian, who gave me a quick hug and whispered, proud of you. The warmth of it almost undid me. When music began to play, I stepped out with my bouquet, a muted mix of ivory blooms, and everyone rose to their feet. I didn't rush. I walked slowly, intentionally, letting the moment sink into my bones. At the end of the aisle, Evan stood waiting, eyes bright, jaw tight, in the way he gets when he's trying not to get emotional. When our eyes met, he exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for weeks. Maybe he had. We joined hands. His were warm, steady, mine stopped trembling. We exchanged vows, real ones, personal ones. Not the polished, elegant lines my mother wanted to force on us, but honest things, soft things. Evan said, I love the way you carry yourself like you're quiet when really you're stronger than anyone in the room. I love the way you shrink to keep the peace even when you deserve the whole sky. I promise to give you a life where you don't have to shrink anymore. I nearly lost it right there. My vows were shaky but earnest. You see me, Evan. Even when I'm invisible to the people who should have known me first. You make me feel like home doesn't have to be who raised you, it can be who chooses you. People cried, quietly, respectfully. It was in every possible way ours. And when we kissed, it felt like the first moment in my adult life where I wasn't performing for someone else's approval. The reception. It was intimate, warm, soft laughter instead of polite applause, instead of dramatic toasts and hovering family members. There was joy, real joy, and the feeling of lifting instead of sinking. We danced under fairy lights strung between vineyard posts. Evan dipped me. during one of the songs that played during our early dates, the ones he used to hum in my kitchen while making breakfast. Brian gave a toast. He cleared his throat dramatically and held up his glass. To Tanya and Evan, the only couple I know who planned a wedding, lost a wedding, planned another wedding, and still managed to make it more beautiful than the first. Everyone laughed. I laughed too, even as tears threatened to spill. But beneath the laughter, beneath the candle glow, I could feel the undercurrent of truth. We had done this without my family, and it hadn't ruined anything. It had improved it. The bitterness of the weeks before slowly melted into something else: clarity. The message. After the reception ended and people drifted away into the cool evening air, Evan and I slipped away to the honeymoon suite at the Vineyard. Still in my dress, still glowing, still breathless. We sat side by side on the edge of the bed, my bouquet lying on the table beside us, petals slightly crushed from being held too tightly. "You ready?" Evan asked softly. I nodded. We drafted a message together. Not angry, not petty, just simple. "Hi, everyone. Evan and I got married last weekend. We decided to move the date up and keep it intimate with close friends and loved ones. It was perfect, and we're so grateful. Sending love." We attached 3 photos. Us under the arch, our first kiss, a wide shot with guests visible and the date stamped cleanly at the bottom. I paused before hitting send. Not because I doubted the decision, but because somewhere deep inside me, the younger version of myself, 7-year-old Tanya, who once tried to get praise for winning a school spelling bee, whispered, "What if they still don't care?" But Evan's hand found mine, and I pressed send. We turned off our phones. We ate cake in our wedding clothes. We danced barefoot on the rug to soft music. We kissed until time blurred. It was the happiest night of my life. The next morning, when we turned our phones back on, silence didn't greet us. Chaos did. Hundreds of messages, missed calls, notifications exploding like fireworks. My mother had messaged first. "What, you got married without us? Why would you do something so cruel? Tanya, this is unacceptable. We deserve an explanation." My father chimed in with a lecture about family loyalty. "But Talia sent the one that made my breath catch. Are you serious right now? You stole the date. Mom said the Vineyard was ours. We already told everyone it was happening. You ruined everything." I stared at her message, then laughed quietly, disbelievingly, because the irony was almost poetic. They had tried to steal my wedding, and now they genuinely believed I stole theirs. Evan read the messages over my shoulder and wrapped his arms around me from behind. "Let them lie in the bed they made," he murmured. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty. I felt free. 2 weeks after our real wedding, the date my family believed was theirs approached with the calm inevitability of a storm you can see miles away. Every morning, I woke to new notifications, my mother posting sentimental quotes about family unity, Talia updating her friends about her big day, relatives congratulating a wedding that didn't even exist. It was surreal, like watching people decorate a house they didn't realize was already burned down. Evan and I didn't argue about what would come next. We understood each other wordlessly by then. We booked the Vineyard on the original date, not for another ceremony, but for something quiet and symbolic. A catered gathering titled "Only Celebration of Closure." When Vanessa, the coordinator, heard what was going on, her voice softened with something like sympathy. She offered to handle everything so we wouldn't have to deal with the mess directly. I accepted with a small, grateful nod. There was no reason for us to be part of the circus. 3 days before the date, my mother dropped a message into the family group chat. "Reminder, Talia and Miguel's ceremony is this Saturday at the Vineyard. Please arrive by 3 p.m. sharp. So excited to celebrate family and love." Attached a picture of Talia in an ivory dress that clung in the wrong places, grinning like she'd already won something. Kayla commented underneath with heart emojis and a smug, "Everything is coming together." I stared at the message for a long moment before setting my phone down. There was no fight left to give to people who had never once fought for me. The night before the non-wedding, Evan and I sat together on our balcony. The city sprawled beneath us, lights flickering like tiny, unbothered stars. He handed me a glass of wine and leaned his shoulder against mine. "You seem calm," he said quietly. "I am," I admitted. "For the first time. I'm not bracing for their next blow. I'm just letting things fall where they're supposed to." He pressed a kiss to the side of my head. "Your family built a world where your boundaries didn't exist. Today, they learn what happens when you finally draw one." I closed my eyes, letting the truth settle inside me. Closure wasn't always a conversation. Sometimes it was simply refusing to be the bridge they walked across. On Saturday, my original wedding date, we didn't go to the vineyard. We didn't hide in bushes. We didn't eavesdrop. We went out for brunch. Pancakes, fresh berries, a pot of coffee we lingered over without looking at our phones. It was quiet, warm, almost peaceful. But somewhere in the background of my mind, a small part of me counted the minutes. 3 p.m. The moment the world my family constructed would collide with the truth. At 3:17, my phone buzzed. Then again and again. I didn't touch it. By 3:30, it was vibrating nonstop. Relatives first. Hi, Tanya. We're here at the vineyard, and they say no wedding is scheduled. Is everything okay? Your mom looks upset. Actually, she looks furious. They said the venue was booked for a private event. Did something happen? I flipped my phone face down beside my plate without a word. Evan reached across the table and threaded his fingers through mine. We don't owe them anything, he murmured. He was right, and the knowledge of it flowed through me like a warm tide. No panic, no guilt, only relief. The next messages were less gentle. 4:02 p.m. Kayla, are you serious? The staff said you booked the venue. Why would you do this to Talia? 4:07 p.m. My father, Tanya, pick up your phone. This behavior is unacceptable. You embarrassed all of us. 4:11 p.m. My mother, Tanya. I cannot believe you would stoop this low. You sabotaged your sister's wedding out of spite. I hope you're proud of yourself. I breathed out slowly, not shaken, just finished. That evening after we got home, Vanessa called. Her tone was careful, professional, but threaded with disbelief. I thought you should know what happened today, she said. I sat on the couch beside Evan and listened as she painted the scene. My mother arrived first, dressed in a pale lavender dress, steps crisp and confident as always. She told the staff she was there for the Scrivener wedding, and when they didn't immediately find the booking under her name, she corrected them, smiling tightly. It might be under my daughter's. But there was no reservation, only our private event. Then Talia arrived in her dress. She asked where the arch was. When she was told there was no arch, no chairs, no ceremony, she looked genuinely confused, like someone had removed the floor beneath her feet. Guests began filtering in their confusion, spreading like a fog. Some whispered, some left, some called me. Then they saw the framed photos on the welcome table, photos of my real wedding. Evan and me, beneath the arch, our first kiss. The date printed clearly in the corner. My mother reportedly stared at one of the frames for nearly a full minute, her face draining of color. Then she turned on her heel and walked out without a word. My father followed. Talia cried. Miguel's family looked mortified. Kayla tried to call me multiple times. The world they built collapsed in the space of a single breath. After Vanessa finished recounting everything, she cleared her throat. I'm sorry you had to go through this. I thanked her and hung up. Evan and I didn't talk right away. We just sat there in the quiet of our living room, the weight of everything settling like soft dust around us. Eventually, he reached for my hand. Do you feel okay? I nodded slowly. I think I do. I think this is the first time I've seen exactly who they are without trying to fix it. He smiled, small but proud. You didn't tear anything down today. You just stopped holding it up. Later that night, we walked through the city again. The air was warm, and streetlights glowed softly above us. We stopped at a little Italian place and shared pasta wine and easy conversation. For the first time, I felt like I was living a life that belonged to me, not to their expectations. When the waiter brought dessert, Evan lifted his glass. To us, he said. To peace, I replied. To the life we choose, he corrected gently. I thought about my childhood, about the years of swallowing disappointment, about the silence they mistook for obedience, about the wedding they tried to take, and the one they never saw coming. As I met Evan's gaze across the candlelit table, it struck me with sharp, beautiful certainty. I wasn't the forgotten daughter anymore. I wasn't the convenient placeholder. I wasn't the family sacrifice. I was Tanya Scrivener, and I was finally free. 2 days after the vineyard disaster, I woke up to a different kind of quiet. Not the peaceful stillness I'd felt on our real wedding day. This quiet was heavier, like the air before a storm. I knew before I even reached for my phone that something was waiting. And it was. My mother's email. Not a call, not a text, an email. The subject line read, "You shamed this family." Evan was still asleep beside me, his breathing soft and steady. I opened the message alone. Tanya, I truly don't understand when you became so cruel. You humiliated your sister. You embarrassed us in front of everyone. We gave you everything, and this is how you repay us. Your actions have burned a bridge that cannot be rebuilt. Do not expect us at Christmas. Do not expect a call. We are done. No greeting, no love, no accountability. Just blame. Punishment. Silence wrapped in self-righteousness. I reread the final line. We are done, and waited for the familiar punch of guilt to hit me in the chest. The ache, the panic, the instinct to fix it. But nothing came. No crash, no spiral. Just a strange, deep exhale I didn't realize I'd been holding for years. They weren't done with me. I was done with them. I closed the email slowly, almost gently, as if setting down a fragile object I no longer needed. When I looked up, Evan was awake, watching me with that quiet, knowing expression he was so good at. What did they say? He asked. I handed him the phone. He read it, jaw tightening just slightly, then set the phone aside. How do you feel? He asked. I stared at the ceiling for a long moment. Lighter. He nodded like he'd been hoping I would say that. You didn't burn a bridge, he murmured. They never built one. They just expected you to cross whatever shaky plank they threw down. I let out a breath, half laugh, half disbelief. I think, for the first time, I'm finally seeing the truth clearly. Not the version I used to make excuses for. The real one. He reached for my hand, and the truth is that they only loved me when I made things easy. A pause, and I'm not doing that anymore. Evan squeezed my hand gently, and that single gesture did more for me than 27 years of my parents' conditional affection ever had. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even sad. I was free. Over the next week, the fallout rippled quietly through my extended family. A few aunts reached out careful, polite messages asking whether everything was okay and if the rumors were exaggerated. A cousin apologized for showing up to Talia's wedding without realizing they'd been misled. But the thing that surprised me most wasn't the confusion. It was the silence. My parents didn't call, Talia didn't message, Miguel or Kayla didn't send a single word. They weren't regrouping. They were retreating. Retreating into the narrative where I was the villain, where they were the victims, where the golden child had been robbed of something she was entitled to. But that wasn't my story anymore, and I wasn't stepping into theirs. One evening, Brian called. His voice came through the speaker with that familiar mix of empathy and humor. You know, he said, when your mom told people you sabotaged the wedding, Aunt Denise laughed so hard she nearly choked on her coffee. I snorted. That sounds like her. She said, Linda, meaning your mom, should be grateful Tanya didn't set fire to the vineyard with the way they treated her. I covered my mouth, trying not to laugh too loudly. Brian softened. And for the record, I'm proud of you. Most people spend their whole lives trying to earn approval from people who are incapable of giving it. You walked away. I swallowed around a tight feeling in my throat. I didn't feel brave when I did it. That's because real bravery doesn't feel heroic, he said. It feels necessary. We talked for another half hour about nothing and everything before hanging up. For the first time, I realized how much weight I'd been carrying in the form of silence, forced politeness, and the constant fear of disappointing people who were never invested in my happiness to begin with. A few nights later, Evan and I sat on the couch, legs tangled a blanket thrown over both of us. We were watching a movie, but neither of us was really paying attention. My mind drifted back to the life I thought I was supposed to have. The family dinners, the holidays, the imagined future where my parents finally saw me, finally appreciated me. It hit me quietly without pain. I didn't lose anything real. I lost an illusion. What are you thinking? Evan asked, brushing his thumb over the back of my hand. I used to think family meant sticking together no matter what. I exhaled slowly. Now I think it means being with people who don't punish you for having boundaries. He nodded. And who show up when it matters. I leaned my head against his shoulder. Thank you for showing up. Always, he murmured. The TV flickered quietly. The room was warm, soft, safe. And for the first time in my life, I understood what it felt like to belong without condition. Months later, long after the shock faded, long after the whispers died down, Evan and I hosted a small dinner party in our apartment. Just friends, laughter, music, real connection. Someone asked if I'd heard from my parents since the vineyard debacle. I shook my head, no, and I'm okay with that. The table went quiet for a moment, not awkward, just thoughtful. Then Evan lifted his glass. To Tanya, he said, eyes warm, a woman who finally stopped shrinking. Everyone clinked their glasses. In that moment, I realized something profound. I didn't need my parents' approval to be whole. I didn't need their presence to have a family. I didn't need their acceptance to live a life worth celebrating. Sometimes the only way to be heard is to stop speaking and start living. And I was finally beautifully living. Life didn't change overnight. That's the thing no one tells you about choosing yourself. There's no dramatic soundtrack, no slow-motion montage of healing. It's quieter, subtle. Sometimes it's just waking up and realizing you can breathe without waiting for the next emotional blow. Weeks passed after my mother's email. The silence stayed. And surprisingly, it didn't feel like punishment. It felt like space. Space I never had while bending myself into someone my family found convenient. Without their noise, I could finally hear my own thoughts, my own needs, my own voice. But silence, even healing silence, has a way of revealing unresolved things. One of those things appeared on a random Wednesday afternoon when my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. I almost let it go to voicemail, but instinct nudged me toward curiosity. "Hello," I answered. A hesitant voice replied, "Is this Tanya? It's Miguel, Talia's boyfriend, the father of her baby, the man whose life had been dragged into my family's theatrical orbit." I blinked in surprise. "Oh, hi." "I hope this isn't weird," he said quickly. I wanted to talk, if that's okay." I stepped onto the balcony, letting the breeze cool the warm tension rising inside me. "Sure. What's going on?" He sighed, the heavy kind, the exhausted kind. "I owe you an apology. I wasn't expecting that." "Talia wasn't honest with me," he continued. "She told me you offered your wedding to us, that you were happy to delay because you wanted the day to be perfect for her. I didn't know the truth until the day at the vineyard." My hand tightened around the railing. "She even said you insisted on giving us the venue," he added. "Said your boyfriend wasn't happy about it, but you were being a good sister." A hollow laugh escaped me. "Of course she did." "Tanya, she lied," he said softly. "She lied to her parents, to my parents, to everyone. When we showed up at the venue and saw your wedding pictures, I realized she'd been lying since day one." I swallowed hard. "What happened after?" "Well," he said bitterly, "my mom told her she needed to apologize to you. Talia refused. She said you stole her moment and that you were obsessed with making her look bad." "That sounds about right." "But here's the thing," he added, his voice softening. "You didn't make her look bad. She did that herself. I just wanted you to know I'm sorry for being part of something that hurt you." I closed my eyes. His sincerity was unexpected, like finding clarity in a place you never expected it to grow. "Thank you," I said quietly. "Really? That means more than you know." There was a pause before he continued. "Talia and we're not together anymore. I tried, but she doesn't want responsibility. She wants rescue. And she expected you to provide it." A weight I didn't realize I'd been carrying slipped off my shoulders. "I'm sorry things didn't work out between you," I said, and I meant it. He breathed out a weak laugh. "Don't be. This is the first time I actually feel relieved." When the call ended, I sat out on the balcony for a long time. Not because his words hurt, they didn't, but because it struck me how deeply the patterns of my family ran. Even in Talia's relationships, the expectation of sacrificing others had spread like roots underground. But I wasn't part of that soil anymore. Later that night, Evan cooked dinner, something with garlic and lemon and herbs. The smell comforting in a way my childhood home never was. He placed the plate in front of me and kissed my forehead before sitting down. "You look thoughtful," he said. "I talked to Miguel today." Evan's eyebrows rose. "Oh." I told him everything. When I finished, Evan sat back, arms crossed, loosely listening the way he always did, without interrupting or judging. "He sounds like someone who finally saw the truth," Evan said, "even if it came late." "Yeah," I murmured. Made me wonder how many lies my family told themselves to justify everything. Evan reached across the table, taking my hand. "The lies don't matter anymore. You walked away from them. That's the truth that counts." I squeezed his hand. "I feel like I'm still learning who I am without them." "That's the exciting part," he said with a grin. For the first time in weeks, I laughed. But the biggest shift came a month later on a Sunday afternoon that felt too calm to hold anything meaningful. I was cleaning out old boxes, leftover scraps of my old life, when I found a card my mother had given me when I turned 15. A birthday I barely remembered. On the front was a generic Hallmark message. Inside, in her handwriting, were the words, "We are so proud of you. Never stop making us proud." I stared at the word proud for a long time. I couldn't remember a single moment they'd expressed pride in who I actually was. Not the grades, not the degree, not the job. Nothing. Pride for them had always been conditional, something I needed to earn over and over, something they withheld whenever it was inconvenient for Talia's shine. Evan found me sitting cross-legged on the floor, holding the card like a relic. "You okay?" he asked gently. I think I said slowly, "I spent so long trying to make them proud that I forgot to ask if they were people worth impressing." He sat beside me. "Are they?" I shook my head. "No, I don't think they ever were. He wrapped an arm around my shoulders. Then it's time to start being proud of yourself. The words settled somewhere deep, soft, healing, and true. I leaned into him, letting my head rest against his shoulder. I am proud, I whispered. Not because of what I did to them, but because of what I stopped doing to myself. He kissed my temple. Good. Months passed. Seasons shifted. The sting of everything faded into something distant like a dream I once thought was real. My relationship with Evan grew deeper, warmer, steadier. We bought plants that I kept accidentally killing, and Evan kept reviving. We hosted game nights. We built a life that wasn't loud or glamorous, but felt more stable and sacred than anything my family had ever offered. And slowly, my world filled itself with people who chose me freely, not out of obligation, not out of guilt, but out of love. One evening, as Evan and I walked home from a late dinner, city lights reflecting in puddles on the sidewalk, he stopped, suddenly turned to me and took both of my hands. Tanya, he said softly, can I ask you something? My heart fluttered. Anything. He smiled. Do you regret how things ended with your family? I thought about it honestly. I regret that I waited so long, I said. But I don't regret the ending. Sometimes people need to lose access to you to realize they never valued it. Evan brushed a strand of hair behind my ear. You deserve people who choose you. And I finally chose myself, I whispered. We stood there in the soft glow of the street lamps, the world quiet around us, and something inside me settled. The bridge hadn't burned. It had never been a bridge. It was just a plank one I kept walking because I was afraid to fall. But now I was learning to fly.